Hello, who's all here?
Hello. Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey. Good. Yeah, I forget to add myself to agenda. I'm like working on it right now. Also, we have like this PR about I receive incremental delivery, basically stream and defer. And on GraphQL working group, we decided that we will add this experimental feature across the whole stack. So in Express GraphQL, in GraphQL.js. So I want to add it to agenda.
Yeah, let's do it.
If anybody opposes, I think like for RFC we should have really like simple criteria for merging stuff.
Yeah. All right. Let me see if we can pull up the agenda here. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So, yeah, we don't have a lot of people here today. But maybe let's go around and introduce attendees first. So I can start. Sam Parsons. I work at PayPal, based in the US, Iowa.
All right.
Dennis?
I'm Dennis. I'm based in Vienna and I'm working on a WebSocket specification. And it's my birthday today.
Hey, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Birthday. All right. I'm Morris, work at IBM in the US, in Boston. It's not my birthday, but happy birthday to Dennis.
Thank you.
Ivan, you're not on here yet, but do you want to say hello? Ivan?
Yeah, I was probably to find like a Zoom Windows.
Yeah.
My desktop. So, hi, my name is Ivan. Originally created with Quack, and this is actually a first working group after we moved to GraphQL Foundation. I'm like a maintainer of GraphQL.js, and I also maintainer for other foundation projects. And happy birthday, Dennis.
Thank you, Ivan.
So do we have any volunteers for note taking? I've got a link up here that we should be able to use for that.
Yeah, I can try that out.
Okay, thank you, Dennis.
Let me just open the note link.
By the way, probably we need to edit it in README, but Foundation started finally to publish videos, so they are on YouTube. And actually a video from last working group is on YouTube. So notes is important, but finally we have like notes is more important because it's distilled version, but full videos are available on YouTube.
Does it happen automatically or do we have to do something?
I think it's automatically that I'm not sure how it's happening. We'll see if this video something happens, it's not published, I will pin somebody from Foundation to publish it. But right now, everything from last, I think, half a year is published, or like 3-4 months.
Sounds good.
Did you say the new stuff automatically publishes, or no?
I don't know how it's done. I know that when they published the channel, it already had all the recordings, all previous recordings. So we will see if new recordings will appear there or not. And based on that, I will ping Foundation guys.
Okay.
Cool. So just want to check on reviewing the agenda, see if we've got everything in here we want to discuss. Ivan, did you have something else you were going to add to the end here, or do you want to do it earlier?
Like, it's super simple. It's basically RFC for stream and defer, and also like short discussion for criteria for accepting RFCs. Yeah, I'm not sure where to put it. Maybe I think it should be short, and it should be the shortest item on the list, because it's pretty straightforward. Maybe so after 5, move everything down and add after 5 and like 5-10 minutes.
I'm going to just add it here. Let's do that right now. Discuss RFC for is it this one right here? The optional features one?
Incremental.
Oh, it's here, isn't it? Incremental delivery.
Incremental delivery, yeah, this one.
And you wanted to also discuss requirements for accepting RFC, is that right?
Yes, RFCs in general. Because like we merging, I think it's second RFC. I don't remember how we merged first one, but yeah, just to be clear about criteria and that everybody agree on them.
Okay, looks good. Okay. So let's continue. So I had, we've changed how we were like tracking like tasks and actions, and we just oriented them around issues within GitHub. And so I've organized also milestones corresponding with our next meeting. So if we want to aim to do an action by the next meeting, we just add it to a milestone for like September, for example. So for July, we closed this. These are the things that we got done. We migrated to the GraphQL Foundation. Hooray, that was good. Thank you, Ivan, for your help on that. And thank you also to Brian as well for his confirmation on the details we needed to do that. So that's great. And the other thing that we got done was finding the best time for meeting. That we closed that because we weren't able to find a good time for July, but carried that one forward. And August. So there's a couple of things that we left open from August. I know that I think this adopt spec MD may be done mostly, but
yeah, I promised to set up build step, to help to set up build step.
I've stuck that later on the agenda, which I thought would be very quick. I just wanted to know, like, Ivan, if you tell me what needs to be done. Yeah, I didn't know if people are ready to put the generated result also somewhere up as a spec, or if you don't want it to be that visible yet. if we are ready, then I thought maybe you could tell me how to do it.
So like,
Or if I can't do it, you could do it.
no, it's actually one thing with GitHub Actions. It's like hard to debug if you don't have commit access. Basically, it's like you're doing something, you're testing. The only way to test it is actually like merge it. So if somebody like doing that without commit access, it's like taking a lot of time. We can like figure out. So basically, I was radio silent because I have a surgery and I'm like right now recovering. So I finally like get back to open source. So I will be more responsive to issues and stuff. So I think we can discuss it inside an issue. But basic idea, we need to copy how it's done for GraphQL specification, but using GitHub Actions, because GraphQL specification use Travis, and obviously right now it's better to, if we add something new, it's better to use GitHub Action from the beginning. I think it's like technical. We can open separate issues, a separate issue about building it. And
So like, as a first question, are we ready to do it? Does anybody think we should not put the generated form up because it would look too much like a final spec when we are clearly very, very far in a bunch of areas? Or
if we, I think we have a draft in the beginning of document, and we already have a repo. So I don't see a big difference between having a repo and having like generated HTML. If we clear enough about stage on top of the spec.
Does that anybody object? Or
I wonder whether we should advise people not to adhere to the spec, you know, not to spend time to get compliant with the spec whilst we still may be changing it under them. Some sort of language that would just indicate, let's, you know, everything's subject to change. So if you want to do work based on it, cool, but it's subject to change. I think that, let's just make sure that we've got verbiage like that in there. So I think it's in here. It's under active development. Do you think that's clear enough that it's like subject to change, or?
Maybe we can, I don't know, if we had picture with a yellow triangle and bank symbol. And I don't know what we can do. We can add this emoji.
And just spec is subject.
yep, all right, I can try to add something quick like that. I get feedback. Is there I know you said you talked about images. Are there do you actually want like a warning?
No, I think we can add emoji if there is like warning emoji. If it's rendered normally inside HTML by specmd, why not?
Yeah, okay, so we can just see if specmd has something like that.
Just so you know, because emoji attract your eyes, attract your attention, so it's people don't scroll them. So,
All right, so we can try to get that in first and then work on the publishing. I don't know about GitHub Actions, but you said it's hard without committer access. Is it something you could try on a fork and commit it on your fork or something?
Yeah, you can try it under a fork. We can synchronize inside the issue. I think it would be more efficient than to discuss it. Or we can like split the work. If you create a build step, and I can just like create GitHub action for it. We can figure it inside an issue. Like I think it would be more efficient. By the way, if you're interested, you can open this issue, and we can, after we add text, we can close specmd issue because it's separate. We already migrate to specmd. Publishing result is like
I think it
second
was,
screen.
I'm not positive, but I think originally it was part of the issue spec at the
Okay,
top.
okay, okay. Maybe, yeah.
I'm not sure. You could click back on it. I think Lee, when he opened it, might have put that at the top. But either way, like I'm happy to still split it
Okay.
up. Like, you prefer it split?
Uh, don't know, like both way works.
All right. All right. All
If
right. So we'll see. It might be more processed than or whatever. It doesn't matter.
yeah, it's like it's on this working group. It's 4 of us, so I don't
Yeah,
think
yeah,
we
yeah, yeah. I mean,
like
I'm
to.
happy either way if somebody feels strongly, but it's all right. Well, I think that's not in order of the agenda, but I think we finished that agenda item now.
Cool. I also just moved that to the September milestone. So that actually moves out of this milestone. This one needs to move there. I don't think these other ones that we have help wanted for have got any help. So those are just kind of aware that they're open. I think there's things that we could progress. Anyone could.
I think it's the bottom one that I said
Oh, there's a comment there.
I could work on, and I put it on the agenda. I meant to have something to show people for the meeting, but I've been busy on other things and I didn't get to it. But I do have on the agenda just to ask a few questions going into this one.
Excellent. Okay, so I moved that one forward and double check on this one. Yep. Sweet. Same, this one is open still. And this is a PR that I haven't had a chance with vacations over the summer here. I haven't had a chance to move this one forward, but I will put that one forward for September as well. Cool. Cool. Okay, so that's August done. And we will close August now. Great. Okay, so that's back to the agenda here. Okay, so over to you, Ivan. Do you want to talk about the incremental delivery RFC?
Yeah, so basically I think like name is like not as straightforward as RFC is itself, because like as community we discussed stream and defer for like years. Lee, like 3 years ago, Lee showed in his talk as one of the experimental features that Facebook working on. But for years it was just like experimental feature inside Facebook that nobody, like Apollo had some experiment, but basically it was abandoned. Everybody discussed it, people had it in their head, but nobody actually implemented until Relay added support for it, and some initiative group from company, I forget name for company, they actually implemented. Rob in Lilian, they spend like time, and they create not only like spec proposal, but they created PR against GraphQL.js and Express GraphQL. And it's implement both stream and defer. So RFC for spec is merged. And on GraphQL working group, we discussed that nobody opposed stream and defer, but we're not sure that it's like it will scale and fit all the like requirements. So idea is to make it experimental feature, to add like support for it, but still market it as experimental. So we can change it later, but encourage people to actually use it. So basically, I need to merge it into GraphQL.js and into Express GraphQL. And it will be great if it's documented somewhere. An idea for RFC folder was to make it like we're working on it. It's not part of a spec, but we want to document it somehow and share it in community. So I think with RFC meets this requirement. Basically, it's used multi-part, HTTP multi-part for deliver a multi-part response. Jaden have some question about how it's interact with his multi-part for firewall ports, and basically it's like totally separate because multi-part firewall port is for requests, and this thing is for response, so it doesn't interact with it in any way, shape, or form. So nobody opposed for it, and like ideally we would actually contact Rob and ask him to present here, but since I saw this working group like a couple hours ago, it's too late for that. But still, I think we can clean our pipeline and just merge it if nobody opposes. Or I would be happy to answer any question.
So as far as like, this is maybe kind of a point of order, but we've got, if we add an RFC here for incremental delivery, that's kind of a bucket of like some sort of experimental type of documentation that hasn't yet made it into the spec.
Yeah, so it's a request for comments.
Yeah. So, I mean, like in that sense, like we need to leave this open just for comments. So it's not actually like merging into the spec. So I feel like it's much more lower risk. This is just the beginning of a process. So it makes sense to me.
We have this discussion for GraphQL. Spec repo also have RFC folder, and we had exactly the same discussion. And idea was that we want to merge stuff that makes sense. We had enough time to discuss it, and like community is generally interested in that. So it's basically to protect against like people put weird stuff inside. So if like we discuss it and people interested in it, if we have enough like couple weeks for people to ask questions inside PR, it makes sense to just merge it.
If we merge this PR, where does the conversation occur? Like, where do the comments go? How does someone comment on this RFC?
So the idea is that people open PRs against this RFC if they want to change or propose like some changes to it. Ideally, we'll probably need to maintain an issue, I think. It's just like I don't want to block change, so I blocked with PR. So imagine it will give it more visibility and it's increase its status. It's not like some proposal that somebody just create PR. It's like it was reviewed, it makes sense. It's not part of a spec, but it's still like documented. Mm-hmm. And implemented, especially since idea is to implement it in Express GraphQL. Express GraphQL is reference GraphQL server. So ideally, we wouldn't implement anything that is not documented under Foundation.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that all sounds good. Like RFC, it's not actually part of the spec, so it doesn't need to have had so much discussion yet. I know some of the stuff we've been saying for this spec for HTTP is stuff that's not implemented in any code today at all. I wonder, like, how would this? So I think 2 months ago, for example, we talked about. Somebody's talking about, could you use WebSockets for queries and mutations and not just subscriptions? So if you, and I think that was left as optional 2 months ago. So if you used WebSocket, I don't know, how would you handle WebSockets with different queries with different later responses? Maybe it's the same, like multiplexing, it's not a big deal. Anyway, I just wonder, like, if there might be more to think about for this, or maybe not. I haven't thought about it.
So,
But I don't mind that coming later. You know, like so I'm not objecting, but I'm wondering if you, because you have thought about a lot, Ivan, like, is that all already thought of? That's all obvious?
so small disclaimer. I actually never used stream and defer, and I didn't take any part in developing like PRs or any PRs or proposal. Um, but what I know for sure is it's like working stack. So Relay already implemented, and Facebook basically use this thing with small like changes in production. So maybe it's not covering all the cases like WebSockets, but basic functionality for HTTP and inside GraphQL spec is more or less production ready, at least for like one company. And I think like some other companies using Relay also implement stream and defer. So I feel like, yeah, that's why it's experimental. So we're not sure it's covering all the cases and all situation, but it's kind of production ready, and we want to test it in more companies. This is the purpose.
Yeah, so it makes sense. It certainly makes sense to get it more visible by merging it.
Yeah, and actually it will help us to identify real issues. If somebody using, I suspect somebody actually using GraphQL over WebSockets right now at the moment, having query mutation, because GraphQL is right now it's like widespread and people do some kind of experiments. So by promoting stream and defer, this person will come back with the question how I should implement it over WebSockets. So actually, like questions that you ask is the purpose of making it experimental.
All right, so we have it seems like we're okay like merging it. That kind of is the the main thing that we need to decide about for it right now, and then just kind of open PRs with, or issues, I guess, with more comments. Ivan, did you want to open an issue just to track conversation about it? You kind of alluded to that.
I will, either you or me, somebody needs to ping after match. Person who do match in match command, he need to write like we merging it. Thank you for contribution. Please also open an issue, because I think a person it should be started by a person who actually create PR and have necessary context. I kind of understand this PR and this proposal, but I don't have a lot of context. I think Rob is the right, Rob or Lilian is the right people for this issue.
Sounds good. So next up, let's talk about criteria for accepting merging RFCs.
I think we just did.
Maybe we can little bit formalize it because it's like second RFC. So not to have discussion, you know, like technically it can be merged by anybody who have like merge permission, but at the same time we are a group, so we need like some kind of rules for doing that. So I propose like criteria that it should be open, it should be discussed on working group. So like person present his RFC PR on a working group, we discuss it, and also it should be some phase of like grammar check, technical checks. and after that we just merge it. So criteria is to like RFC review process like any other RFC, and also person presented on working group and nobody object merging it.
So you have to get unanimous support to get it RFC through?
Well, like, I mean, like, people, it's not like we support it, but it's not like, it's not, it fit definition of what we're doing. So like, if somebody propose something that is not part of HTTP, for example, something over TCP, WebSocket is over HTTP because connection is established, so it's kind of touching this topic. But for example, pure TCP is outside of a scope. So
must be within scope of the HTTP spec and fit within the vision of GraphQL, where it has a use case that supports it. And I mean, there's got to be some things like that.
yeah.
Maybe as a step after this, I could take an action to just kind of write up a summary of that and put it as a README in the RFC folder. So we have kind of like, here's what our expectation is.
Good idea. Yeah, really good idea.
Okay, I'm just going to highlight that here. Go ahead, Morris.
So like in this case, it's already in an implementation. I think you're saying that's not generally required, but do you want to be explicit whether or not that's required?
Pragmatically speaking, right now, I think Express GraphQL is not in best shape. So like right now we cannot require it, and like entire spec is not stable. So like in future, probably, but right now, I don't think it's fair to require person to implement it against Express GraphQL. Or you mean implemented in some other GraphQL server?
Yeah, just should there be a requirement that there's some implementation before you merge the RFC?
Yeah,
or
I think
maybe not.
yeah, I think it's a good idea because like it will put right fresh code. Yeah, I think it's actually yeah.
And then anyone can check it out and see how it works, which helps flesh out the idea rather than it just being abstract.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. All right. So is that good for this topic, this agenda item?
Yeah.
So next up, Benedict asked me to bring up his PR here on clarifications about HTTP status codes. And so after the last meeting, he's kind of cleaned this up and reduced what's in here. Yeah, so splitting the PR, keeping minimal agreed upon changes. And so he's made those changes. Ivan, you had a comment here. I think he probably hasn't had a chance to look at that. But other than that, I don't know if there's anything else that we need to discuss. We're pretty close to having something we can merge if those changes were addressed. Do you agree, Ivan? Or
Yeah, I agree, except like with this point.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we need to duplicate the spec. Spec is pretty clear on why data have a certain value. So a spec describe why it's null and why it's missing. And I think like we should either remove it or reference the spec or just not to mention it here. So like, I don't like duplication inside the specs.
So I think what you're saying is you prefer a statement along the lines of, if the response has content.graphql and has a non-2xx status code, the data entry must be either null or not present.
Yeah.
And delete this little chunk here. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's really simple. Just kind of reduce some, like these parenthetical explanations, right?
Yeah, because they like, spec is more verbose why something is null. It's not only execution error. It's like, and I don't think we need to duplicate or intersect with it. I think it's outside of the scope. GraphQL over HTTP is complementary spec, so we should not like.
Yep, that's a straightforward response. And then after that, it would be good to kind of clear the deck and merge this PR.
What was that? I mean, I don't know. Are you saying that also then about like 212 through 214? Is that just, I mean, that's kind of the way GraphQL spec works. Or is that useful to have here to
So for me, like 12 and 14 is, yeah, another point I actually wanted to add in this PR. I would change it to non-normative node, like a node, not because it's like even text is formulated more like a node than requirement. I think it's useful to have clarification on some stuff, like because responses like prescribed in GraphQL spec, this thing is also in GraphQL spec, but like person who implement GraphQL server and reading the spec, we should not demand for him to read the entire GraphQL spec. I think like having non-normative node here is good, especially since spec MD actually support nodes.
Yeah, so just change that to a note.
Yeah, because there is no should, must, or any such words in this paragraph, so it's not non-normative anyway.
Can I just comment this right now, just capture it? There. Just add that. Does that look good?
Yeah.
Cool. Just want to capture things in place so that it's easy for Benedict to follow up on that. Cool. So that's that. Okay, number 9, Morse.
I think we already finished that one.
And
one note, can we add into PR itself that we agreed to merge it, except like with 2 changes? So like,
yep.
So first we don't forget it, and the second it's like to encourage Benedict, like.
Oh, we lost Sam.
Yeah, we lost Sam. Here.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry, guys. Cool. And so we discussed number 9. And do we want to talk about this one here?
Oh, yeah. So this doesn't have to be much discussion for now. I mean, kind of like when we look at Benedict's PR, we've gone through a whole lot where there's actually lots of disagreement on where we should be going with what kind of stuff should be in the spec. And so I wondered if we can get some, I don't know, there's not so many of us right now, but get some agreement. Like, what do you guys want? Is they're different, like to be more, so this is all about how can the server know that the client's sending GraphQL? In my experience, there's at least two different scenarios, which is one is when you are expecting GraphQL, how you would decide if it is or not. And the other is when you're not sure what you're getting, whether you decide whether it's GraphQL or not. Would you want me to call that out in like separate parts of like two separate paragraphs or whatever of two different analyses? Do you agree with that division? I guess maybe that's my first question for discussion.
Can you elaborate a little more on the division between those?
Well, I guess some of this gets into the general question of, is it, you want to, you know, how pervasive, how strict or how like lenient should the spec be? I mean, if I've got a GraphQL endpoint where I know I'm expecting GraphQL, and I don't know, any client might be contacting my server, and different clients might be different, and I get, say, something that pretty much looks like GraphQL. Say it's got application that I'm getting a JSON payload in, and it's got a query and an operation name and variables, but it also has three other things. You know, should I assume that it's got things that I don't recognize at all? Should I assume that it is GraphQL or that it's not GraphQL? I might make a different decision based on whether this particular endpoint handles only GraphQL or handles both GraphQL and other kinds of JSON.
So I think we discussed it. So MIME type. Initially, we discussed MIME type for responses.
Yeah, that was one of my questions I wanted to ask is, are we also using that same MIME type for the request?
Yeah, I think we agreed on that. We actually discussed it a couple more times. It's like a problem that we don't document decisions that we make during this working group calls. That's why we repeat them. I think we actually agreed if we go in the way of register, like claiming MIME type. It's like most of MIME types used both ways. So you can send them and you can receive them. So from that sense, like we just say stuff that mark with certain MIME type should follow our spec. Stuff that is not marked by this MIME type, we don't.
Yeah. No, that makes it much easier if we can use that MIME type. Is it okay that it's the same MIME type even though you're expecting a different kind of data in the request and response? I don't actually remember. Like there are many MIME types that are used request and response, but are there MIME types that are used request and response where the actual data would look different?
Yes, so actually like we returned back to, I don't know, like half a year ago discussion. And Benji pioneered this topic of MIME type. So if we look in other protocols like gRPC and SOAP, they use MIME type for request and response, and format for request and response obviously different. So like MIME type, we have like prior art of using MIME type for protocols.
Perfect. Okay. All right. In that case, I mean, so in that case, it's very simple. If you see, like you said, Ivan, if you see the MIME type, then you know the request, and that's about. And then I can try to write up some. I assume just like these other things, we don't want to be too specific. If you don't see the MIME type, leave it up to the servers, right? Yeah.
I mean, maybe we could even use some languages. If servers must interpret requests that include that MIME type as a GraphQL request.
Yep, that seems totally fair, right? And the MIME type gives us that ability. Otherwise, it'd be like, you know, all optional everywhere, right? So the MIME type is very powerful.
Yep.
And it gives us ability to do cleanly break and release in a sense, because like initially I'm like personal advocate for doing non-break and release, basically like make a spec that satisfy all system clients. But since we discussed it with Lee, and like a general discussion in working group was to try to, instead of documenting stuff, try to make specs that prescribing how stuff should be done. We need a clean breaking away. So it's not theoretical issue. It becoming a practical issue that existing servers need to serve pre-spec and post-spec clients in a sense. Like they need a way to distinguish, like for example, if we extensions, if we specify that you cannot put additional field except inside extensions, it's make like a lot of existing stuff invalid. So like, and other things. By the way, like MIME types, I will answer another question, like how you would discover if a server support GraphQL or not without sending the request. There is options, not options, I think like header options, some HTTP verb for getting list of MIME types supported by this URL. So basically you can send, I think it's options, yeah, options. You can send options to server, and server responds with URL, and server responds with content types. And one of content types should be application GraphQL plus JSON, or like any other type we agreed on. So it's solving this problem also.
Yeah. All right, I think that topic's all done now. It should be pretty straightforward.
Cool. I also just left a comment while everyone was talking there. There's an open PR that talks about content types, MIME types, and there could be some overlap with this. So
Right, might not even need a separate PR. Right.
yeah, maybe we can just alter that PR, or, you know, yeah. So maybe have a look, read and see what you think. Comment on that.
Okay.
Cool. I think that's everything on the agenda. Anything else that we want to discuss? There is one thing that I would like to discuss. So over on the Slack channel, there was a discussion about the timing. We don't have a perfect time really that that works for Jaden, who's in Australia, and so I think he was not able to make it today. So we've got to figure out as a group what we do to make sure that it's possible for everyone who wants to join. Ivan, I was going to ask you, what is, you know, the working group, the main spec working group, how do they make that inclusive for people who are in other time zones?
In that case, like Lee, in a sense, benevolent dictator of GraphQL working group. So like all organizational decision made by Lee. So he just picked a time and we stick to it. We also have like Andy, and he's from Australia, and he constantly have a trouble joining this working group. But we try to discuss something, but it's basically like died in a sense with discussion. You know what we can try to do is like creating, like you're doing a great job of creating an issue. What about like if we open this issue a week before, or like 2 weeks before working group, and have like poll for 1 week to choose a time, and like whatever time slot take most votes win, and we just like I don't know, maybe it's not a great idea.
If we followed that, like we've done 2 polls, one in July and one in August. And in July, we had one that had a time slot that had 5 votes, and that was actually this current time slot. But that doesn't, it's not great for everyone, obviously, still.
I think like we can choose the 2 time slots. Like technically we have an actual problem. So actual problem is that Jaden have a problem of connecting. So maybe we can find like second time zone and switch between one month with one time zone, another month with another time zone.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I think there's some downsides in switching times. It's harder for people to consistently come, and they're like, oh, is it this week or not, or this month or not? And,
yeah, like one thing I would actually love to do. I think like I will try to ask somebody from Linux Foundation to connect me to somebody from other organization, like not foundation or others, so I can actually ask these questions, because I think it's not that easy to find on internet answers to this question, but I don't think we are first organization facing these issues. I think like big organization like not foundation constantly have it. And since they have like 10 working groups or more, I think like, because I cannot figure out a good solution.
I mean, just thinking about it, I think one possible solution would be to go to find a way to do a more asynchronous working group so that we don't have to meet up all at the same time. I don't know exactly if there are people who are doing that successfully, but that's a possible way. Sorry, Dennis, I think you were, maybe I cut you off. Sorry.
I wanted to say that it boils down to the thing that somebody has to make a sacrifice. The last thing that we did, so the last work group that we had, Jaden did this sacrifice and he was awake like 5 a.m. in the morning. And one possibility of making this sacrifice a bit more easy is having the work group during the weekend, because fuck it, I mean, I can stay then up until the 3 a.m. in the morning and not worry about going to work tomorrow looking like a bag.
It's like, it's same for me. It's actually like, for me, like every day is the same, because I'm like, don't have official job. So like, I don't care it's working day or weekends, but some people like have families. Not my case, but people have families, and basically it's like, it's intrude the work-life balance. So I think it's like, it's pressure people breaking with, and it's like personal decision of a person if he want to do like programming stuff or like organizational stuff on weekends.
Mm-hmm.
I still feel like it's not a unique problem. Like, I think like any big working group with people from around the world experience this issue. So I actually like.
Yeah, I think that's the reason why people don't have problems with this in big working groups, is because they're big. And like you said, Lee just makes up a time and just tells everybody, yeah, let's meet at this time, and everybody complies. So they don't care. And we are kind of a small group, and it's kind of fair to like, if Jaden is going to be the guy that always wakes up early in the morning or stays up late to the night, and he's the only one, it's only fair to like switch that around, and we should be the ones doing that at least once in a year. or just
Actually,
not. I mean, for me personally, I wouldn't mind waking up 4 in the morning and just having this group, or split the group apart, have like an hour at this time and have an hour at another time, maybe.
I think splitting is like it's
Yeah.
problematic with syncing up. Like um, I will think about what's we have an issue for that. About discussion time zones.
We do.
Okay.
I think it's actually probably closed because it was about our previous
Okay.
goal, but we could, open another issue. I mean, I don't think we've really solved the problem. We've just had a poll. We've got some feedback, and we still don't have a real solution. So,
I mean, even after the poll was done, Jaden was like, I can't make this time. I'm losing money because I'm either not doing work or I'm not sleeping.
But at least we make a poll. So initially, I think like either me or Sam just pick a random time. So like having this poll confirms that it's like at least like this time fits majority. So I think poll was useful in a sense that it's not random time. It's at least it's time that.
But maybe random time is more fair. Just like roll the dice, and if it ends up being 2 a.m. in the morning for us, but I don't know, 2 p.m. for Jaden, fair enough, right?
Yeah, it's like it's not only a problem with 4 a.m. It's a problem if it's work time. So like you cannot.
I understand that. I'm just saying that we can't really like solve this because no one really did. We just stopped discussing it and well, like let's do it at this time.
Yeah, I feel like leaving at that time it actually makes most sense. But I don't know, like maybe there is a magical solution that we don't know, but I doubt it. But the only thing in my head is to ask like somebody, like if we have some working group and they say we tried those approaches, nothing works, we can trust them and save ourselves like a number of attempts. But there is like one thing before we forget it. I like some suggestion or doing it more asynchronous. I'm not sure how to do that, but I feel like it's good thing in general. That way it allows us to move faster and not to wait on the working group and not to do last minute stuff. So, but I'm not sure how to do that.
Yeah, I think that's probably the only real solution is to just change the question of like how a working group is run, and instead of it being oriented around synchronized meetings, I think we have to get better at communicating through things like GitHub and Slack and change how we organize things. Like, I think that's a possibility. Like you look at companies like Automatic, for example, who support WordPress, and they do a lot of asynchronous work, barely have any like synchronized calls or anything like that. And so I think that's a possibility, but we just have to kind of change how we think about things and how we communicate. And maybe like if someone wants to present something, well, do a screen share, record it and post it on your issue. Now you've presented it. Now we can all have a look at it and comment on it asynchronously. I think some things like that we could do.
I think like it's good to have live session for question and answer and for presenting stuff. But I feel like, for example, for proving stuff, we can go asynchronous. So like one of the things we have is list interested developers, which was initially added. I don't remember who added it, but it was someone idea to actually create this list.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if a person add himself, we kind of just like mention all the developers in this list inside an issue, or like send them email saying like we want to merge this stuff. You have like 1 week to review it, and if you want to object or ask some question or something, please do this in 1 or 2 weeks time period. In that case, we'll still have like working group calls for quick back and forth, but person don't feel like the only way for his voice to be heard is by being here. And this is also unbox like stuff. So for example, for RFC, instead of presenting here, person can create RFC, we can send this email or like mention on GitHub all the developers, or we can do both, send the email and mention on GitHub. And person don't need to present on working group and people can comment and review and stuff. But it's boxed, so we still have a clear date and clear expectation.
Yep. Well, do you want to talk more about that now, or should we just kind of close the conversation now? We can kind of keep talking about improvements to that, maybe over Slack as well in the interim.
Yeah, like if you're interested, it's actually you suggested asynchronous stuff. Like we can have issue. We can start discussing asynchronous stuff asynchronously instead of waiting for next working group call to discuss it.
Yep.
Because it's like right now it's just like brainstorming and it was my just like idea from top of my head. It's not necessary. I think like calls is most cases brainstorming is better asynchronously than asynchronously.
Yep. Cool. Well, I guess we'll just meet in the asynchronous world out there soon. Thank you all for attending, and we will be in touch soon.
Yeah, great.
See you next time.
Thanks.
Bye.